Okay, this is going to be a brief screencast just to finish up some material on the Konza Prairie case study introduction. As I mentioned, I brought over the wrong PowerPoint, and so I didn't get to do the prairie grass forb and animal of the day, so I'll handle that. Our prairie grass of the day is Sorghastrum nutans, Indian grass. You guys saw this out at Martha Laffitte Thompson when we went out to do our observations. It was the grass that you counted in your plots. It's a C4 grass, meaning that it does a type of photosynthesis that Dr. Reynolds will tell you about, and it's a type of photosynthesis that is very conservative where water usage is concerned. It's a perennial bunch grass. It grows up from a common root mass. It's the state grass of Oklahoma and South Carolina. It can reproduce using rhizomes, which are underground stems, and so it grows back after fires really well. It can vary quite a lot in height, but it gets very, very tall, and it is a common forage grass, especially for things like bison. The prairie forb of the day is Baptisia alba, one of my favorite prairie plants, wild white indigo. It's in the legume family, the family Fabaceae. This is a family of plants that have root nodules associated with their roots, and in these root nodules are nitrogen-fixing bacteria, so they can take atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into nitrate. This is an herbaceous perennial, and it has these nice, pretty white flowers. And as is true with all members of the family Fabaceae, the seeds occur in these pods, and so beans are also in this family. And you can see the distribution. It's fairly widespread in the eastern half of the United States. The animal of the day is the black-tailed prairie dog, Cyonomys ludovicianus. This is a picture that I took at Wichita Mountains Wildlife area down in Oklahoma. These are colonial living organisms. They live in prairie dog towns where many of the individuals are related to one another. They give out alarm calls. You can see one giving an alarm call because he either sees this hawk or this coyote. When he gives an alarm call, all of the animals in the prairie dog town will go down into the burrows to escape predation. Oh, it could be calling out because of this badger right here, or for that matter, these burrowing owls. They are also preyed upon by black-footed ferrets. Black-footed ferrets are their primary prey item is prairie dogs. They live throughout the western U.S. and southwestern U.S. They are commonly eradicated by ranchers because they do clear areas away and compete with cattle for forage, and also they can cause problems when cattle step into prairie dog holes. And they're just cute as can be. Here's a group of them playing on a rock, a group of young ones playing on a rock in Oklahoma. So that is that. You should also note that I have added some slides that illustrate some of the things that we talked about in class, the Farrell cells, the Hadley cells, and the polar cells, and how light behaves as it enters the Earth, and also how these things shift north and south as you go through the seasons. So what I wanted to do was come back up to the heterogeneity thing and remind you I posted a link to Chris Jordan's website, and it concentrates on a image of a bunch of crushed cars that are made totally from images of keys. So go and do that to illustrate the importance of scale and heterogeneity. And then we were about to talk about bison and how bison can cause heterogeneity of nutrient input. And in this case, you can see this is an actual bison at Konza. You can see that this guy is taking soil samples. You can see that there's a ring of death around the bison because actually nutrient levels are too high. And then as soon as you get out here to the edge, that's a place where nutrient levels are now low enough that things can grow, but high enough that it really enhances growth. And as you move away from this carcass, you'll get fewer and fewer and fewer nutrients until finally you get out here and you can't sense the effect of the bison carcass at all. And so here you have a very localized tremendous increase in nutrient availability in the soil, and that will persist for a number of years, and they've actually studied this with bison carcasses at Konza. Fire is the other type of disturbance, and remember that the numbers in the watershed designations at Konza indicate the frequency of burning, and they do a series of control fires at Konza. These are pictures of controlled burns at Konza. They can be quite hot and fast moving because of the amount of biomass that is on the ground in a prairie. You can see in this image that there is a guy who is walking around the perimeter, leaving a trail of fire behind him, and the wind is blowing from the left to the right in this figure. He started at the downwind end and comes upwind, and then once he connects this wind will sweep through the watershed, and the watershed is slowly burning from the other end, so that the advancing fire will catch up with the first part of the fire that was lit. You can see that have fire breaks built into Konza in the form of these dirt roads. And what this does is it creates heterogeneity. You can see a grazed area on the left hand and an ungrazed area on the right hand. And when a place is grazed and burned, it creates quite a lot of heterogeneity, both at small scales, like from this area here to this area here, and also at broader scales where you have large swaths that have been burned and are growing back, other large swaths that are not burned, and then this is, of course, freshly burned. And so the act of burning, while you might think it's homogeneous in its effect, it is actually quite heterogeneous as well. And once again, the level of heterogeneity that you think about depends largely on what scale you're looking at things. And you can see that the effect of fire down here is different than the effect of fire up here, and in this watershed is obviously different from an unburned watershed. So over time, prairies have declined because we've converted many prairies to farmland. And so here is something from Iowa, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, that shows the pre-European settlement of prairie. All of the yellow used to be prairie, and now the gray is agriculture, and you can see that most of prairie land has been converted to agriculture, and even some of the forested land has been converted to agriculture. So European settlement of the Midwest has led to a tremendous loss of prairie. I think it's estimated that less than 5% of the original aerial extent of prairie in the United States still remains. And that's pretty much the end of that. And so now I need to figure out how to turn Camtasia off.